Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Monday, March 17th, 2014. I want to first wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. And today's today's talk is going to be about the upcoming press conference there with the New York Knicks naming Phil Jackson as their new president of basketball operations. And what does this have to do with Carmelo Anthony? Now, tomorrow's going to be an exciting day if you're a Knicks fan. Or should I say Tuesday's going to be an exciting day if you're a Knicks fan. Full disclosure and disclaimer, I'm not a Knicks fan, so I am speaking as an outside objector. But I always try to be a thinker. Why people make certain moves, why now, and how does this affect other people? Now, I was watching watching First Take earlier today, and the discussion was about Carmelo Anthony. Will he resign in New York? Now, according to Anthony's sources, or sources that Stephen A. was talking to, that he did say he did not speak to Anthony. And to me, that's very important, because unless you really get it from the horse's mouth, do you really know if this is how the player really feels? And these sources, they could have agendas. They could be telling you the truth, but they could also be coming to you from an agenda. So we got to be careful, because the source said that there is no way that Anthony is staying in New York, that this has no impact, that the Phil Jackson signing has no impact on him staying here in New York. Now, let's just think about this for a second. Let's try to think outside the box, because the one thing the media and a lot of people in this country fail to do is to think outside the box for a minute. Does this sound logical? When have you known a superstar free agent or superstar to turn down Phil Jackson? This man is an 11-time champion as a head coach, a 2-time champion as a player. This man has been successful on every level of basketball that he's been. Remember, he was also a coach, and he ran this ABA team, or this minor league team, and he also did well there. So it's not like Phil has no experience running a team. Okay? Yes, being a president/general manager is a little different than being the head coach. But there are a lot of similarities. Number one, managing egos. I don't care if you're a head coach or a GM, you have that same issue. You got to manage egos. Number two, putting people in a position to be successful. That's the job of a head coach. It's the same job of a general manager. Now, it doesn't guarantee just because you were successful as a coach that you will be successful as a general manager, or vice versa. But I tend not to bet against guys who were successful as a coach who's making the leap to being a general manager. I tend not to bet against those type of guys. Because more often than not, successful people figure out a way to become more successful. That's just the way it is. Now, if you listen to Carmelo Anthony, does Anthony sound like a guy who's ready to hit the bricks, as they say? I remember it wasn't that long ago, when Anthony was playing in Denver. Anthony made it clear, not only publicly, but privately, as well as to the Denver Nuggets, he was not going to re-sign with them. Okay? He made that perfectly clear. So what did Denver do? Denver did the next best thing, and the smartest thing. They traded him. Because why? They knew that there was no chance of him re-signing with them. So there was no need to sit down and talk to him, because Carmelo didn't want to talk to them. So when you hear Carmelo says, well, I would like to hear with Phil Jackson, sit down and talk to Phil. Why would you sit down and talk to somebody if you're dead set against staying? If you got your mind made up that you're leaving, there's no need to talk. Ask LeBron how that worked out. When he wanted to leave Cleveland, he didn't talk to Mike Brown, or he didn't talk to Dan Gilbert or the new head coach Byron Scott. He shut them out, and Dan Gilbert was very upset about that. But LeBron, in a sense, kind of did the right thing, because if you're not going to stay, what is there to talk about? So I think Carmelo told his friends this, so this way, in the event Phil Jackson doesn't want him, he doesn't hurt his leverage. You see what I'm saying? I think that Carmelo's staying. If Phil wants him, Carmelo's going to stay on board. It's just that simple. But in the event that he gets the sense Phil doesn't want him, then he can say, well, I left on my own terms. It's what we call a face-saving method. Okay? Or as we call it in the trading industry, hedging your bets, so to speak. But I do not believe Carmelo is leaving, and here's why. Number of reasons why. If Phil really wants Carmelo, Carmelo is staying. Because you don't say, oh, this was a power move by the Knicks if you was intending on leaving. You don't say you want to sit down and talk to the man if you was intending on leaving. You don't say you're willing to change your game if you was intending on leaving. These are not the words of a guy who's itching to get out of the city. That doesn't sound like the words of a guy who's looking to leave. I mean, I just want folks to think about this. This is why I'm like, be careful where you get your information from, because these so-called sources can put out a lot of things. Some of it may be true, some of it may not be. And I'm not saying that these sources are not credible, but we just got to think for a second here. We really got to think. I think Carmelo's playing both sides just in the event that he sits down with Phil and Phil lets it be known that he doesn't really want to build around Carmelo, that Carmelo can have an easy escape and then say it was his decision. Where if he says, oh, I want to come back to the Knicks, and Phil lets it be known, I really don't want you, I really don't want to build around you, do you know how bad it makes Carmelo look? And not only that, Carmelo would then lose the most important thing he had, which is his leverage. I remember not too long ago, it was back actually in 2007, when Kobe Bean Bryant requested and demanded a trade out of LA, saying that I'll sign with the Clippers or the Bulls. And where did Kobe ended up staying at? In LA. Guys don't leave the big cities like that, big city markets, if there seems like there's a plan. Now, notice that's when they brought Phil back on. Because Phil came back on in 2008. So that acquiesced to Bryant. Bryant, you see, Phil has a way with athletes that very few guys have. And for reasons like that, that's why I feel that Carmelo isn't really going anywhere. If Phil says he wants Carmelo in New York, Carmelo's staying in New York, and that's that. That's that. Carmelo's not going to take that chance. Because Carmelo doesn't want to be that first superstar who rebuffs Phil. Because if you don't win, what do you think the media is going to say about you? They're going to call you all sorts of names, including a loser. You don't want that. Your best bet is to hitch your ride with Phil, and I believe Carmelo knows this. Now, let's get to the other elephant in the room. The media's like, well, this is not going to work because, oh, James Dolan is going to keep getting in the way. This has been his norm or his pattern since he's owned the team. Folks, let me explain something to you. James Dolan did not spend $60 million to override Phil Jackson. And don't give me, well, he gave Larry Brown $50 million. Larry Brown was the coach of the team. Larry Brown didn't have control of the Knicks. Phil has control of the Knicks. Let me tell you how big this hire is. of Phil Jackson. This is the biggest hire since the Knicks brought Pat Riley to New York, or since Pat Riley came to New York. That's how big this hire really is. Because no other coach or GM or anyone else had the kind of cachet and name recognition these guys have. Larry Brown, nice name recognition, okay? Only one title. Only one. Okay? And from what you hear, not the easiest person to work with. And not only that, he was just the head coach. Now everybody talks about Donnie Walsh. Here's the issue with Donnie Walsh. And one caller called up to Stephen A. Smith, Ryan Rucco's show earlier today, and actually said the same thing I said. A lot of people want to say, oh, but he interfered with Donnie Walsh. Well, if he did not interfere, Carmelo's not in New York today. Do people realize this? Because let's look at the timeline. In the summer of 2010, or before the summer of 2010, Donnie Walsh did all that work to create all that cap space to go and made it no secret. They're going after LeBron. That was the big ticket item. Everybody knew it. LeBron. And when came time to do the pitch, LeBron basically laughed at them. Literally laughed at them. That was the report. Saying that these are a bunch of old people. And then Stephen A. reported today that LeBron actually had more faith and confidence in Isaiah Thomas. So, in my opinion, you sent the wrong person to do the wrong people to do the pitch. But that being said, forget Isaiah, because this isn't about Isaiah Thomas, or this is about LeBron. Because you spent all that time to try to get LeBron. And you didn't have the person who had the cachet to pull it off. Now, no one knew at the time that Wade was working LeBron behind the scenes, which he was working on for a couple of years. Well, if the Knicks had a superstar athlete, the Knicks could have done the same thing. But the Knicks didn't have a superstar athlete working LeBron during that time period. And not only that, even if the Knicks did have a superstar athlete, think about it. A superstar athlete with no rings, with management who has no rings, compared to teaming up with Dwayne Wade, who has a ring, and Pat Riley, who has multiple rings. Wow, that's not too hard of a decision. So LeBron James got away. Now the Knicks, to scramble, was trying to it felt like they had to get somebody, got Amari Stoudemire, in hopes that would lure LeBron, or make LeBron James think about coming to New York. LeBron said, no, that's not going to hurt the thing, because it wasn't going to help it either. So you went and you gave Stoudemire a 5-year deal when you knew his knees, by what the doctor said, you knew the knees was only going to last for 2. You gave him a 5-year deal. See, dumb moves like this, whether it was James Dolan or it was Donnie Walsh, whoever signed off on this, it really doesn't matter. These are bad moves. So you lost out on LeBron, you ended up with Amari Stoudemire and Danilo Gallinari and all these nice little pieces, but you were a sub-500 ball club. Then Carmelo let it be known during the summer he wanted to come to New York. Now, you had a chance to trade for Carmelo early on in the season and gotten a lot less, but you held out, thinking, well, we'll get him in the summer and give up nothing. Well, what you didn't understand was that Carmelo really wanted the money, and he didn't want to leave that money on the table. So in order to get that money, they had to do what was a sign and trade. So the Knicks, had you made the trade earlier, you could have given up a far fewer pieces. But instead, what happened was you waited, and then Miguel Prokhorov, the owner of the New Jersey Nets, soon to be Brooklyn Nets, came into play and upped the bid for Carmelo. And then Carmelo says, well, New York is acting like they don't want me. I'll consider Brooklyn or / New Jersey. So then that's when James Dolan said, no. That's when James Dolan stepped in and said, this ain't happening. We're making the trade. Okay? And the same media people who lauded and praised Dolan for stepping in when Donnie Walsh was about to blow it are the same media people who's today criticizing him, saying he interferes too much. You can't have it both ways, folks. You cannot have it both ways. It was a good move, even though, yes, you gave up too many draft picks for Carmelo, but yet it was a trade that needed to have been made. Because without a star attraction, it's hard to recruit other stars. Here you finally got an athlete or a star who says, I want to come to New York. That's not something you turn down. You supposed to turn heaven and earth to make that happen. But you got to have the funds and the cap space to do it. The Knicks got the funds, they just didn't have the cap space for a lot of time. So you couldn't, even if a star wanted to come to New York, they couldn't consider you because why? You didn't have the cap space. Here Carmelo finally says, I want to come to New York. You got finally a star who says, I want to come to New York. And instead, you're dilly-dallying. Okay? That's why James Dolan stepped in. Now, what does this all got to do with Phil Jackson? It has everything to do with Phil. Because if you want to recruit players to come to New York, it's a lot easier to do it if you got Carmelo already in place than if Carmelo bolts to Chicago. Because if Carmelo bolts to Chicago, you're without a superstar again. The only other superstar you have left is an aged, broken down superstar in Amari Stoudemire, who's no longer a superstar that's going to attract other free agents. Carmelo and Phil have that ability. Stoudemire and the rest of that team don't. This is why Phil is going to build around Carmelo, and it makes the most sense. And because the Knicks after next year will finally have some cap space, this is going to make it now coming to New York a lot more attractive because they know Phil is in charge. See, with Phil in charge, that removes James Dolan out of the picture. You can best believe that. Or Phil would not have taken this job. Phil is more than a figurehead. Now, you have some people who will suggest, well, the timing of this signing was because of some protest. Folks, there's only going to be 100 people protesting. It wasn't like you're going to have thousands or you're having the Million Man March down the street protesting. It was only going to be 100 people. Come on, if I'm James Dolan, I'm not worried about 100 people protesting. Thousands of people or millions of people protesting, that I'm worrying about, not 100. 100 people protesting doesn't worry me. So they didn't sign Phil because of some protest. They signed Phil because they wanted to make certain that Carmelo Anthony did not leave the coop. It was that simple. Because they don't got the word that Carmelo was fed up with the way James Dolan was running things. And James Dolan was smart enough to say, I better bring Phil here. That lets everybody know Phil is running things. That keeps Carmelo in nest. Because Carmelo was about to really fly the coop, I believe. But by them doing what they did, by bringing in Phil, you watch when Phil has this press conference come tomorrow. Because Anthony already said he's going to be there. Well, wow. If you plan on leaving, what's the sense of being at the press conference? There's no need to if you plan on leaving. So we already got this out. Carmelo's not going nowhere. Carmelo's staying right here where he belongs. That being said, now with Phil doing the talking and Phil spearheading this, you watch all the people going to start jumping on the Phil bandwagon again. Okay? And all James Dolan got to do is stay out of the way for the next 5 years, and you can best believe he's going to do that because you know why? Unlike Donnie Walsh, and I love Donnie Walsh. This is not to bash Donnie Walsh. But Phil Jackson has legitimate credibility because Phil has rings. And players today respond to guys who have rings. It's that simple. This is a business. And at the end of the day, superstars don't want to go ringless. You don't want to be known as that Charles Barkley or Patrick Ewing or George Gervin or other guys, Elgin Baylor, guys with no rings. Dominique Wilkie, guys with no rings. The Lord of no rings, as they call him. No, you don't want that. You want rings. That's why LeBron was willing to take the hit and sacrifice to go down to Miami. Now, again, I don't agree with him teaming up with Wade because he gave up being Batman. He gave up being the man, but he did what he felt he needed to do to win the ring. And at the end of the day, you got to kind of respect that, even if you don't like the way he went about it. I certainly didn't like the way he went about it, but he has the right to do it, and I understand why he did it. Because at the end of the day, it's about rings, folks. If Carmelo wants to be known as one of the greats, the rings is necessary. Okay? You don't want to be known as one of those superstars or guys who with no rings. You don't want those. So at the end of the day, you got to come hell or high water. Phil Jackson can just show the fingers, baby. The rings on the fingers. Hey, this is credibility. Players will listen to that. Players will listen. Players respond to that. That's why I do believe Phil will build and create a competitive team here. Now, again, it is not Phil's job to bring a championship. Okay? That's not Phil's job. I was listening to the head of the protesters who's going to be protesting tomorrow, one of the organizers, and he didn't even know his history because he's blaming James Dolan for letting Pat Riley get away, when Dolan wasn't even owner of the team when Pat Riley was here. I mean, come on, folks, you got to know your history. So, so the reality is this. Just ask a prospective free agent, when someone's making a pitch for you to join their team, do you want guys who have some rings or a guy pitching who has no rings? Come on, it's easy. Because, look, New York, in and of itself, nice city. Now, in a lot of other sports, look, baseball, everybody wants to play for the Yankees. Because why? The Yankees have a history of success. Period. When you got a history of success, everybody wants to come to New York. But when you have a history of futility, no one wants to come to New York. Mark Messier one time said it best. And for those who don't know who Mark Messier is, he was the captain of the New York Rangers the last time the Rangers won the Stanley Cup in 94. But Mark Messier said it best. When you're winning, there's no greater place to play than in New York. But when you're losing, there's no worse place to play than in New York. Okay? There is no middle ground here in New York. And here you finally got a superstar who wants and is accepting of coming here. That allows you to bring in others. But in order to do that, you got to have the cap space, which means you got to stop giving out bad contracts. That has what has been killing the Knicks for decades. For over a decade, bad contracts. As we call them, poison pill contracts. You got to stop doing it. And you also got to stop giving away draft picks like it's water. Because why? Those are what we call real tangible assets. And when you give away all your assets and you have none, you have no bargaining power. You have no chips. You can't play the game. Or as we like to say, you're stuck. So I am really looking forward to this press conference tomorrow. It's going to be the biggest thing covered because, I mean, let's be honest, tomorrow's going to be a slow sports day. Okay? The NCAA tournament don't start until like Wednesday or Thursday. So you don't have to worry about that. There's no real big football event other than a pro day at some school. So really, tomorrow, this is going to be a must-see event. And this should, and notice, and I was just thinking about it earlier today. Notice when the Knicks started playing better. Because the Knicks is currently on a 6-game winning streak. Now the Knicks are starting to play like the Knicks from last year. All season long, this team was playing like if they were trying to lose on purpose. It seemed like. And they were losing to a lot of bad teams. Now, all of a sudden, they're winning. Now, they may not make the playoffs. But now, all of a sudden, the effort is there. Notice the timeline of it. They started playing well once the word came out that Phil Jackson was considering coming to the Knicks. Now all of a sudden the players' play picked up. That's not a mere coincidence, folks. I don't think they did that because of Mike Woodson finally figured it out. I think what it was that, hey, if Phil's coming on board, hey, I better show him that I can play, that I want to be here. Because if not, he's going to ship my behind out of town. Because you know how I know this? During the season, J.R. Smith, the player who I have issue with, he's untying guys' sneakers, he's pulling down their headband, he's doing all this stupid, childish stuff. Now, all of a sudden, look how serious he is on the court. And notice how all of a sudden his game picked back up. Do you think that's a mere coincidence? I think not, folks. That's one of the main reasons. If I'm Phil, you're out of here, buddy. Because how long is that going to really last? I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. I wish each and every one of you a good night.